Hey, what's up guys? It's Thomas DeLauer with Six Pack Shortcuts, and today I've got an awesome video for you. I'm gonna show you exactly what you can do pre-workout to get the most out of your pre-workout meal and get the most energy in the gym that's gonna allow you to burn more fat later on in the day. And then we're gonna head on over to the gym and I'm gonna show you one simple trick that you can do in between your working sets to maximize the effectiveness of each and every set so that you boost your metabolism even more. Then after that, we're gonna come back here, and if you stay through to the end of the video, I'm gonna show you a food that you can eat right after your workout that's gonna keep your body in fat burning mode and also keep you from getting sore. So let's dive right in. All right, so the way that you're gonna get the most out of your pre-workout meal is simply by separating out your proteins and your carbohydrates. Now, normally I'm not a huge proponent of this because the effect is really relatively minimal, but when we're talking about pre-workout and you're about to head into the gym, you want to get the best kind of digestion and the best nutrient absorption that you possibly can. So there's a couple of reasons why I want you to separate your proteins away from your carbs. But let me give you the main reasons. Realistically, it's hard to digest when you have your proteins and your carbs together. And the ultimate goal is when we're in the gym, we don't want the blood to be in the digestive tract working on digesting food. We want the blood circulating throughout the bloodstream, circulating throughout the body so you can deliver nutrients. The other reason is we want to have those nutrients available to be uptaken by the muscle. So we want the muscle to be able to utilize the amino acids that are floating around. And if your body isn't absorbing them because it's busy digesting them, unfortunately, it starts catabolizing and breaking down the existing muscle tissue, which means that you're actually going negative and going backwards when you're in the gym. So if we can maximize the effectiveness of how you digest your food before you go into the gym in the first place, you can have those nutrients floating through the bloodstream so you can get more muscle growth, but you can also get a lot more fat burning out of it as well. Now, physiologically speaking, the reason that we're separating out the proteins and the carbohydrates just a few minutes is because your body can't really break down both efficiently at the same time. You see, the enzymatic processes that are used for carbohydrate metabolism and the enzymatic processes that are used for protein metabolism are so different. Sometimes they start to conflict with each other. And if they conflict a little bit, it leads to fermentation of the carbohydrates that you ingested rather than maximum absorption. So if the carbohydrates are fermenting rather than being absorbed and uptaken as glucose, then you can get an upset stomach, but it also causes more blood flow to the stomach and less blood flow to the muscle and to the heart where you need it the most when you're working out. Now, the effect is really subtle. You only need to separate about 15 minutes from when you eat your proteins and when you eat your carbs. But I recommend you start with your carbohydrates, wait 15 minutes, and then eat your protein. That way, the carbohydrates that are easier to digest are broken down, and then you can introduce the protein. Now, additionally, I recommend eating fruit pre-workout. It's one of the only times I really recommend eating fruit. You see, fruit, the fructose is utilized for energy immediately. It doesn't generally get stored as muscle glycogen, which is why it's not good post-workout. According to the Annals of Nutrition and Metabolism, in a study that they conducted, it was found that fructose, the sugar that comes from fruit, does not replenish glycogen stores after a workout. So what that means to you is that you don't want to be eating fruit post-workout because it's not going to restore what you burned up in the gym. You're going to want to stick to a traditional glucose or a starchy carb. So now that you know you want to eat your fruit, then you want to wait about 15 minutes, and then you want to dive into your protein, we can head on over to the gym and I'll show you that trick I was talking about. Okay, so we're here in the gym, and a lot of times after you finish a set, you just get bored. If you're not doing drop sets, or you're not doing rest pause sets, or you're not doing any kind of superset where you're moving back and forth really quick between exercises, it gets really boring. You finish your set, and then you sit around there twiddling your thumbs wondering what to do. But I've got a solution for that, and it actually works really well, and it's been proven recently to be extremely effective in terms of introducing a little bit more strength to a muscle and actually activating new muscle fibers that might get you a little bit more hypertrophy, but also stimulate a little bit more of a burst in metabolism after the fact. So what you're gonna do, for example, is let's say you were doing some bent over dumbbell rows. You were doing single arm dumbbell rows, and you were rowing for maybe 12 to 15 reps. And your typical rest period with that is going to be something around the way of, anywhere from 30 to 60 seconds, depending on the intensity level. Well, once you finish that set, you're going to stretch the antagonist muscle group. And what that means is, for instance, if you worked your back, you're going to stretch your chest. You always want to stretch the antagonist muscle group. So another example would be if you were working your triceps, you'd want to stretch your biceps. If you were working your quadriceps, you'd want to stretch your hamstrings. And the reason behind that is because the antagonist muscle is known to relax when the regular muscle that you're actually training is contracting. So if you can activate those muscle fibers and allow that muscle to relax by stretching it, that means that you can get a tighter contraction with the muscle that you're actually working on. In other words, the antagonist muscle group isn't going to get in the way with its muscle tension. So for example, if I'm working my chest, I'm going to want to stretch my back so that my back is not adding extra resistance to my chest. It's allowing the chest to go freely through the range of motion. Now you want to stretch it for about 30 to 40 seconds. So if you're working in a heavy rep range where you're going to have a minute and 30 rest, maybe a 8 rep range where you want to have that 90-second rest, you're only going to stretch for 30 to 40 seconds of it. And you need to make it a pretty intense stretch. You need to really activate those muscle fibers. But then you want to just relax, let yourself recover for the next 30 to 45 seconds, and then go right into your next set. So now that the workout's done, we're going to head back home, and I'm going to show you my post-workout meal that's a little bit unconventional that's going to help skyrocket you into some new fat loss. All right, I'm back from the gym now, and I'm going to start mixing up my post-workout meal. Now, ordinarily, you're probably going to have something like a shake and maybe some post-workout carbs. You usually want to spike the insulin with some carbs and then help the protein shuttle into the muscle to recover. But in this particular case, I'm keeping the carbs out of the equation because I'm trying to burn a little bit more fat. You don't absolutely positively have to have carbs post-workout. You can go to a high-protein, high-fat meal post-workout. Just make sure you don't have any carbs in the equation at all because you don't want to trigger that insulin response where the fat would go into storage too. So in this case, we're using my favorite organic grass-fed ground beef, and we're also using some organic broccoli. And you may be wondering why the heck I'm using grass-fed beef post-workout, but let me explain because there's good reason why. Grass-fed beef is rich in omega-3 fatty acids, and omega-3s, we hear about them all the time. They're not just good for heart health. Let's talk about why they're really good for what you're interested in. They're going to help you burn fat. You see, right now, we consume so much in the way of what are called omega-6 fats. Everything from canola oils and grains and everything like that, they're high in omega-6 fatty acids. Well, our bodies need a natural balance of omega-6 to omega-3. But unfortunately, we are so omega-6 dominant that the omega-3s practically barely exist within our bodies. And those omega-3s reduce inflammation within our bodies. And that reduction of inflammation means that we can recover faster and that the muscles can heal faster, which allows the metabolism to boost faster. Now, additionally, reducing inflammation within the body by increasing the amount of omega-3s is going to also reduce cortisol levels. And if we can reduce those cortisol levels, then that means that we're going to have less of that stubborn belly fat, and we're going to be able to come out of the gym and go right into that mode where we're burning fat and building muscle a lot easier. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna make some burgers. I'm gonna make it with that grass-fed beef, and I'm gonna put a couple of things in there that are gonna also help me burn a little bit more fat and reduce a little bit more inflammation. All right, so the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use some coconut oil in the pan. The reason that I'm using coconut oil is, like I've said in other videos, it's a medium chain triglyceride, which means that the body doesn't convert it to fat and uses it readily for energy. So it's a great way to kickstart your post-workout. Now the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take my grass-fed ground beef, and this is pretty lean grass-fed ground beef. This is actually 93%, 7%. So it's 7% fat, which is still relatively lean. But that fat is what we want. We want those omega-3s within the fats of the meat. Now I take a little bit of the Himalayan pink salt. You don't need much of that stuff. And the reason I use that is because it's a lower sodium content, so you're not going to get the inflammation that you would get from traditional sodium. If you ever gone out for a salty meal and the next day you feel really puffy and you don't have as much muscle definition and you don't feel as lean, that is likely why. And then personally, I'm going to use some turmeric just because I like the taste of it, but it's also one of the biggest anti-inflammatories that you can have. So again, in the spirit of reducing inflammation so that we can get more nutrients to the muscle and so that we can get speedier recovery, I'm going to do as much as I can to make this an anti-inflammatory meal. Then I'm just going to mix up the meat, just making a burger. Then just like you would make any other burger, nothing fancy to it. And while those bad boys are cooking, I'm going to explain exactly why I put the broccoli in with my post-workout. Most people wouldn't want to use broccoli because it's a low glycemic carb. It's only like a 15 on a scale of 1 to 100 in terms of the glycemic index. So it's not going to do much for you in the way of replacing glycogen, but what it is going to do is it's going to lower your estrogen count. The reason that it gets rid of the excess estrogen within the body is because it's got something called indole-3 carbinol, or IC3, which reduces estrogen levels within the body. Now, the reason that you want to reduce your estrogen levels right after you get back from the gym is because your testosterone levels are high right now, and you want to capitalize on that. You want to take advantage of your testosterone levels being elevated, giving your body the right nutrients when it can use them the way that you want it to build and recover muscle and to help speed up your metabolism. So I'm gonna let these guys finish cooking up. I'm gonna eat them within 20 to 30 minutes after my workout, just like you would with any post-workout meal. And then about 2 hours later, I'm gonna eat another meal that's high fat, low carb, and then I'll reintroduce my carbs. So basically allowing my body to get as much of that metabolic fat burning as I can, utilizing those omega-3s before I reintroduce carbohydrates. As always, guys, keep it locked in on Six Pack Shortcuts and let's rock and roll this 2016, the best health and the best fitness of your life.